weren't one of those people that got into sailing at an early age. You were very busy in the military, did all sorts of other outdoor activities. I was on exchange with the Royal Navy, and Liz started doing some sailing. I had no interest in taking up sailing. And then I tagged along on some of her courses, and then I was hooked. And then we started doing more racing and then teaching. And then in 2012, we decided we'd had enough of our careers in the military, being in the Canadian Forces for 23 years, both of us. And we wanted to do an adventure that we could share with our kids. So we retired and bought an old boat.
Okay.
And kids were 6 and 8, sailed away, came back. The kids were 16, 14, and 6. So 36,000 miles later, and and added a kid to the mix.
Okay.
And an amazing adventure around the Pacific, from down to New Zealand, up to the Aleutians, and lots of points in between.
When I started the world tour from Belgium, I'm Belgian, I thought I can do a world tour, but Belgium is the center of the world, and I can do that as fast as possible. And my plan was to do that in 15 months, to be back in the center of the world. But
a lot of people start they're in a hurry and they want to get all the way around.
They want to get that T-shirt for circumnavigating.
And then they're like, wow, but if we stop and we pause, and that's not a magic. And so how did you decide to?
Yes, but the magic came due to COVID. While we departed in September 2019, and in March 2020 we were in Galapagos, and then in the Marquises, and then happened COVID.
Right.
So we were.
You have to do that.
We were stuck. We were in the Marquises for 3 weeks, and then they sent us to Tahiti. And we stayed from April till February the next year in Tahiti. Well, we couldn't sail to the west. New Zealand was closed, Indonesia was closed, everything was closed. I started to think the center of the world is maybe where I'm now.
It was especially good for our kids to have such a good visibility of all those different environments. And not just the remote villages we visited, but also our peers cruising of all different levels of affluence, whether they were coming from, a mega yacht and we're all still on the beach together, or the guy with a plywood catamaran with a little outboard and no water maker and no GPS, and we're all interacting in different professions, different nationalities. Kids just got to see that was normal.
Whatever kind of kid they were, they could be a noisy one, a boisterous one, a quiet one, a crafty one. Our daughter made, this is a scarf that our daughter, out of the yarn they have in Fiji, that they'll use to make all the rugs. That was what she did, but I found each of them has kind of been able to grow up. Having to
and a bit more according their pace.
But I at one point was kind of worried that their schooling didn't look kind of like ours, and they weren't writing essays and taking exams, had amazing field skills and sailing skills and all of that. And like, oh my goodness, what if they're, not going to be able to make that transition when we come home? Our daughter is in her 4th year software engineering and is a teacher's assistant and, doing really well. Our son's at our service academy at at RMC in a full scholarship, so it's interesting to see that despite the informal education or the non-traditional approach to it, they've excelled. And that's not just our kids. It's been fascinating to see how all those kids that we cruised with have really excelled in whatever path they've chosen.
How did you organize schooling for the kids?
We left, like Max said, with kids who were 6 and 8. We had a 30-year-old boat that needed a refit. And we had children who woke up earlier than their mother did. So what I noticed when I would wake up is they were at the table, they were playing Lego, and if you listened carefully, the Lego people were installing 12-volt circuits, and they were installing solar panels, and they're having all these little scenarios happening. And I learned very quickly, follow their cues and don't stop what they're doing to put a worksheet in front of them, because if you do that, they're going to run away and hide under the table and nobody's learning anything. And so what I learned was, when they say, Mom, look, you put down what you're doing and you turn and you look and you pay attention. And if they say, Mom, how does this happen? Or tell me the answer to this question, then you answer to the extent that they want to listen. And then we kind of followed that for the first couple of years. We had a homeschooling organization through the government, like a public school here.
That's an obligation.
With an obligation. And we were registered for it. But then because we were doing a refit, because within 6 months I was expecting their younger brother, who was kind of part of our plan that once we weren't so busy with our jobs, so we were for babe. So there wasn't a lot of capacity for worksheets and homework and this kind of thing, which the school didn't appreciate. So eventually we changed schools to one that was more child-led, child-focused. And then as they grew, they started to ask us for curricula, programs, and so on. And so eventually we had a pretty rigorous language arts, pretty rigorous math, engineering and history and social studies kind of came as we lived. Didn't have there with 2 engineers without learning that the force on the wind goes up with the square of the change, and what does that mean for your track?
Well,
That kind of stuff.
it was funny. We were doing another transit from Tonga down to New Zealand, and one of my former staff and a good friend of mine joined us, also an engineer. And he was just laughing because the kids asked, I don't remember, what, some basic question at the dinner table, and it became free body diagrams and, a good mechanical engineering thing. And my friend was just laughing because it's the classic, engineering to, program. But it just was natural. Or, they just ask about a historical stuff. Well, one of my degrees had a lot of history in it. So, okay, let's talk about those kind of things. And it just was more organic than, hey, it's 0900, time to commence math 101. But we had that luxury of time that in our life ashore, we didn't have. We had busy careers in the military, traveling all the time, busy commitments. And so we didn't have that luxury of time to do that education bit ourselves. That all of a sudden on the boat, like really what do we have? Responsibility to manage the boat, manage the adventure, the weather, the bureaucracy, and work with the kids. Oh, and try to make sure everybody gets fed.
It enables certainly to have more education in your hands, in parents' hands.
Every kid boat that I knew homeschooled differently. So we did have friends who did the kind of homeschooling that I thought going into it we would do. 8:30 the breakfast is cleared, 9 o'clock the books come out, children do assignments until lunchtime, the books go in the box, they go on the shelf, and now we go ashore to the beach and can kind of run the homework. We had friends doing that, not so much ourselves. Others who were doing more correspondence courses back, others who were even more unschooling than we were, but each family kind of found their own way, and their kids thrived in that context that their parents created.
And thrived on their return to normal life.
Our formula was a bit different. We cruised 3-4 months and then had the kids at school locally. So they were in Tahiti in school, on the lagoon. Then in New Zealand, then in Bali, then in public school in Japan. Last year here in Victoria.
Victoria. And did you go up Japan, Alaska, and down to Victoria as well? Okay.
Yes. Being in a local school gives them more local experience, friends. It enables also us to be more integrated in the population, There are other parents, there are school gatherings and teachers, and for them sometimes it was hard. Like in Japan, they were in a public school, they arrived there. No one word English. Oh, Japanese. They sat there. They were great in school. They gave them private lessons. And
it's a bit like you can pick your voyage. Like some folks liked to spend lots of time in one location. We had other friends that started to get itchy feet if they'd been in Anchorage for 2 days. It's very much a pick your own adventure, different ways of doing the education, different routing. And they're not, the nice thing is it's not better or worse. It just, you tailor it to what fits your family, your budget, your interests.
Most of the people I met, they do that for a certain amount of time. I don't know much people who do that for 30 years.
No, there are some, but...
There are some, but...
Most of our friends were 3 years.
Yeah.
If you have kids now, we are here in Victoria, I had a plan to continue our tour, but my son becoming 16, best time is over. He has other interests than cruising with that. For the good sake.
For the sake of the family.
Yeah. And he's 2 years of his graduation from secondary school. For the last 2 years, he can use a bit stability to...
Yeah, and we did something similar. We came back, so we were gone 7.5 years, and we came back and our daughter got 1.5 years of high school, which was good. There was stuff that we couldn't do on the boat. She was mostly academic focused, but she did dance and musical theater.
That was part of why we came back as well.
The kids are... And now I have them in a Swiss boarding school. Yeah.
So they're not here in Victoria?
No. We were together for 6 years. Kids boarding school in Switzerland. But no drama, no cries. In a boarding school, it's another life, and you have to cope with others. You are there for 6 or 8 weeks, so day in, day out. It's a new venture for them. Are there reasons we shouldn't do a tour like that?
Well, I think it goes back to some of the work you're doing. It's not a holiday. It's not a bareboat charter in the BVIs. It is an amazing adventure, but what makes it an adventure is there is an element of hardship, an element of risk, an element of hard work. Quite often where that falls apart is not the mechanical stuff or even the financial stuff. Quite often it's relationship based, and that's where Liz has been more engaged.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be teaching a course on the psychology of voyaging, a 2-day course.
Okay.
And the course was developed years ago by a man who was on the HF radio with people who were offshore for the first time. And he was hearing the drama in their voice when the weather was hard. And so he's like, man, these people had no idea what they were ill for. I should make a course for that. Okay. I've just taken it over.
Okay.
And then I'll teach.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
To your question, is there any reason anyone shouldn't do it or any reason not to go? I don't think there's a reason not to go, but I do think there's significant preparation to go and do it in order to make it successful. Because why do people buy a boat, sail to the first big destination that they can sell their boat and get off and go home and never return? Probably they weren't prepared. Probably everyone on board wasn't enthusiastic. They got into a situation that scared them, again, because of lack of preparation. And so none of those are reasons to not go, but if they can get ahead of that curve, then they can go farther.
It's a commitment.
And with any commitment, there should be preparation. So when you ask, is there a reason to not go? I guess we would suggest to folks that not to go until there's a degree of readiness, which doesn't mean you need to do every single course or the absolutely perfect boat, but a sufficient level of readiness across all of those. So whether it's relationship-based or the part that I work with more now is the appropriate boat, that fits into their budget and their mission, like what do they want to go do, enough training or experience that they're not going to be, we always joke about we're never going to take our boat to Hawaii because we've met all these couples that do their first big offshore trip, get to Hawaii, and they're like, it's the boat or me, things unravel from there because they've launched without making sure the relationship was ready, maybe without the right boat or making sure the boat was ready or the right skill sets. So definitely we would encourage anybody that has an interest in doing it to do it, but make sure that they've done some level of preparation across the board.
Yeah, and as you say, the human side is the most important.
It's hardest way to quantify.
Yeah. Even we had crew on board, and even me, sometimes being in my bunk, I thought, wow, that is not right, and they do wrong things. And in my head, I did that. Every time I had these thoughts in my head, it says, stop, don't do that, stop, forget it. Yeah. Well, otherwise you build for yourself a story of negative things. Yeah, and then it starts once becoming a mountain.
But also you have a thought, this is not the angle that we should be on, or something is shifted, to respond to it in the moment, but to come from a place of curiosity, right? why are we suddenly heeling over? Oh, I didn't want to wake you to reap the sails. Oh, well, that's why I want you to wake me.
In aviation, we called it cockpit resource management or crew resource management. So there's a lot of good science out there on how do you bring up things. Because if you have a concern, then you should raise it, whether you're the skipper of the boat or whether you're the new crew. I volunteer on one of the marine search and rescue boats as a coxswain here. And we always say anybody in the crew can say, stop the boat. And we do that regularly. At night, bad weather, we're like, let's stop, reset. And we had a deal on our boat that, if one of us wasn't comfortable, we'd raise the flag. We were in the northern Cook Islands going through a pass. Liz had been quite ill. We really wanted to get to an anchor. So I'd been basically single-handing with 3 children. Wanted to get through this pass, and you get that target fixation of let's just get this done. And we're going through the pass and it's getting rougher and rougher, and we're looking to the anchorage we're mandated to go to, and it looks awful on a lee shore. And I was feeling uncomfortable, but I was kind of determined to push on. And Liz is on the bow. As you know, these places don't have good charts, so she's visually guiding us through. And she's like, I'm not sure, I don't remember what you said, but you didn't even have to complete your sentence. And we were going to be committed very shortly. And I was just enough time to be able to spin the boat around. And then we actually hung off the atoll. The next downwind area would have been, like 800 miles to American Samoa. And we had a great 2-day, 3-day holiday on board, looked at the sharks, played board games until the weather calmed down. But it's that whole listening to that your instinct, but also then communicating it effectively. Well, it's like taking new crew. I used to teach offshore sailing, and you always want them to wake you up as skipper, even if you don't want to be woken up. So you're dead tired, you get woken up, you come into the cockpit, they're like, I'm worried about that squall, and you look and it's like, oh my God, that's like 2 hours away. But you don't want to say grumpily, what the heck, like 2 hours, you're like, okay, thank you for waking me up.
Yeah.
But this is how I'm looking at it. Look on the radar. It's here. But thank you. And when it comes to here, wake me up and I'm going to go back to bed now. So inside you may be thinking.
Yeah, but it takes effort it takes effort. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just somebody's doing something different than I would have done it.
Yeah.
That's driving me crazy. And then you have to do.
It takes effort. It was forbidden to use the word problem.
Problem.
So for me, I didn't want to hear that word.
Your whole 6-year trip.
No, we didn't have. We had facts. It is a fact. If you translate it in problem, it's immediately a mountain.
It's a bit like we were cautioned to never talk about plans on a passage. We had intentions. So we intend to go to Tonga, whether family, other stuff comes up, and we're like, but actually we're going to go to Fiji. An interesting learning curve for us, 23 years in the military, professional engineers, getting a project finished time on target, that was that whole mentality. Cruising, you need to be flexible. And, when the weather's not cooperating and the boat's not cooperating, well, do we actually need to get there? No, that would be dumb. It'd be adding to our risk. Then we'll come up with a new plan.
If a crew member woke me up at night, the sail was flapping around. Sail. Okay, then I wake up, I go in the cockpit, I make my cigarette, I smoke my cigarette, and then I go to the scene. It takes effort, but it calms down. He's there. Are we floating? Yes. Are we heading in a good direction? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I have time to think. What's the next action? It's a positive way. Did you have scary moments?
Well, one of our running jokes is we never wanted a magazine article. You pick up magazine articles and here we had this big drama and then this went wrong. And we've actually read some of those articles about places we've been in French Polynesia or others. And a lot of the time it's lack of preparation, lack of patience. I mean, if you look at a pass going into an atoll in the Tuamotus and it's really rough and nasty, well, that's tidal. You can hove to, have another cup of tea, wait it out, and then go through no magazine article. And I worked in risk management aerospace before, so, very much a focus of how do we de-risk this?
Yes.
So we laugh about, everybody focuses through our talks on storms. Oh, did you get any big storms? Said, no, we did this 36,000 miles. So, as you know, it's about a circumnavigation and a half. We were only in a gale once. So, I mean, I have been in hurricane force winds on other people's boats and stuff. And my biggest learn from the hurricane force winds where, you know, people were injured and we broke lots of stuff was I never want to do that again. Why did that happen? Because we were in the wrong part of the ocean at the wrong time of the year. You then dial that back for our own planet. It's our home. It's our family. Pay attention to what time of the year it is. Pay attention to those weather forecasts. You know, we've waited 2 weeks in Fiji to get the right weather window to go south to New Zealand. And I start to get antsy because I'm still that project manager or engineer guy at heart. I'm like, wait a second, we're in Fiji. This is not a bad place to be stuck for an extra 2 weeks.
We have the advantage in what we are doing that we master our time. If you are a commercial yacht with guests, they have to be 50
Well, the hurricane
over there.
was my Yacht Master Ocean assessment, and it was on a boat that runs a commercial, a nice big oyster that runs a commercial program. And yeah, in April, they moved from the Canaries back to Europe. And funnily enough, you're guaranteed to get some horrible weather. And that was part of the objective, and it was accomplished.
I also use Predict Wind.
Yep.
That's a marvelous tool.
Absolutely. And to see how that progressed over time was amazing. Like from when we left.
All the models you have.
Yeah. When we left, we had just the SSB and a Pactor radio. So we'd only get, you know, propagation morning and like twilight and during the night. And one model, we'd have just the GFS and none of the routing software. And then amazing over our short time of, in our case, you know, the Iridium Go was the big advance while we were out, and then multiple models. So we were intending to come back the way you did through Japan and over, but we were back in the Marshall Islands, and we love the Marshall Islands, and we love kite surfing and spearfishing. So the Marshalls were amazing. And we said, rather than going Marshalls, Federated States of Micronesia, Guam, Japan across, which would be lots of time on the move, we'd spend another 6-7 months in the Marshalls. We did a straight shot from there to Dutch Harbor in the Aleutians and then cruised there. But even on that passage, we never had gale force winds like we could have. There was a big post-typhoon low departing Japan, crossing our track. So we just stopped for 2 days, let it blow by, and then crossed. But if you were in a hurry or that, you know, mentality from racing of, okay, we got to keep pushing forward, keep the VMG good, then, you know, that's when you get all these dramas.
We started this tour on a catamaran, and then I sold the boat in Tahiti and built a new boat, a motorboat in New Zealand.
Circa. We actually, so we met Steve and Linda that started the FPBs. We actually got to go out on their FPB 78 with them in Fiji. And then when we were doing some maintenance work on our boat, we were at North Sands, right beside Circa. So we got to see a lot of that.
But on our boat, we fly a kite as propulsion system. Yeah, that's a challenging thing.
Well, it's funny because before I was a kite surfer, and I would see those early conceptual drawings of the commercial ship with the kite, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't look that hard. And then we started to learn to kite surf, and then we're like, holy cow, that's a lot harder than it looks to do it efficiently. It's not quite as simple as just launch a kite.
You need minimum 50 knots of wind. The problem is not the high wind, it's low wind.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's the problem. Well, you can even fly it with 35 knots of apparent wind. That's fine. The more wind, the stabler he is.
Yes, yeah. There's a long tradition with the sort of the more trawler design motor yachts to have the get home device or the extra efficiency of a riding sail and different approaches to harness the wind. So it's kind of an evolution of that.
Why did I move from sailing? I had 6 sailing boats before to motor, and it's mainly for the speed. Now we cruise at 11.5 knots. Yeah. That makes already a big difference.
Avoiding weather.
We do 300 miles in 24 hours. Yeah. So upwind between the Philippines and Okinawa, there we had upwind, not that bad, 2-3 meters of waves, but I have to take an angle of 30 degrees. The sea is the sea. You are on a sailing boat or on a motorboat.
The Atlantic on a 500-foot ship. Yeah. I was in the military. Yeah. The sea is
the sea.
Yes.
Our range, we have a cat, the Juvante yachts, and a monohull, cruising 11.5 knots. And now we have a third model, that's a trimaran, cruising at 20 knots.
Oh, wow. That's
20 knots.
That's
imagine.
standard.
Imagine you do 500 nautical miles in 24 hours over the Atlantic over 6 days.
Yeah. And it means now our weather forecasting, that is so good, and especially with these new models that are coming out that are AI based, and you only need a short window at that speed.
Yes.
You should be avoiding a lot of that weather.
Yes. Plus, a depression goes from west to east over the North Atlantic every 5 days in the winter. A depression moves at 20-25 knots. So if you cruise at 20 knots, you go in the tail of a depression that is past, and you stay in the same system till the other side.
Well, it's like the
Flat weather,
the big race,
flat sea.
the big race.
Yeah, they do that.
Out of Europe, they do the same thing, but on the other side.
Yeah.
So they get the push.
Yeah.
But that's the challenge with like doing the Fiji to New Zealand trip that we've done 3 times.
Yeah.
Is the lows are coming across.
Yeah.
And if you're doing 6 knots, trying to gauge when you're going to get there and not smoke one of those.
Yeah.
So with that higher speed, you can pick and choose your windows much better. Yeah, no, that'll be exciting.
One of the things I had to learn is there's a big difference between scary and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So when your boat is 30, 35 years old and you're in seas where it's creaking and making noises and all the wood is moving against all the wood, it's very easy to get into your head and get very afraid. And then you go from downstairs to the cockpit, and the people up top who aren't hearing any of those sounds are having a beautiful sail, and the sun is going to set, and the sea is not that bad, and so on. And it was a good realization that being afraid is not the same thing as a situation being dangerous. And the more you could stay on the awareness of, am I in danger or not, the less you could be afraid in the moment. I don't think any mother could sail from the Marshall Islands to Alaska, which is 3,800 miles. 1,300 miles. And every day that you go, the water is getting colder. You're 1,000 miles from anybody, and you've got 3 children on board. There's no mother that can do that without a sense of the significance of what you're doing and what could happen if things go sideways. And so I actually had a moment, I don't know which passage it was, where I had the question come into my head in a moment like that, where you're perfectly safe. Like you said, your boat is flowing. You're going where you're going. Nothing is wrong in this moment. And I heard the question, do you trust? And I had to say to myself, yes, I do.
Yes.
I trust my situation. I trust my boat. I trust our teamwork. I trust our preparation and just our equipment. And so, yes, there's 2 or 3 meter seas and there's wind and we're 1,000 miles from anywhere. And if things went badly, they would go very badly, but we'll be okay.
I call it safe and comfort. Is it still safe? Okay. If I can say yes. If I have to say no, then I have to change my plan. Yeah.
And that's where the communication is important, where that gets communicated, because you don't want somebody that is thinking it's dangerous and they're becoming less effective as a crew member because they're stressed that this is dangerous. And that's where experience and training is important, that it gives you the ability to differentiate between, hey, this is a boisterous, uncomfortable sail, and oh my goodness, we're in danger. And that really only comes from experience.
I think this was Mexico to French Polynesia. So our first big offshore passage of a 5-month-old baby in a carrier. And of course, you know yourself, the boat doesn't just rock side to side. It kind of does this 3-dimensional thing. But once I kind of realized the sea is doing what the sea does, which is wave patterns from 2 different directions that being this kind of flooding mainland. And our really solid blue water boat is doing what it's designed to do, which is to go up and over and sideways on them. I realized my only job was to brace myself so that we would be solid in our play. But again, it wasn't dangerous. It was uncomfortable until I got my head around it.
You have to convince yourself to convince others. And it's easier when I tell them, you're right. It's uncomfortable. You're right.
Yeah.
but it's safe.
We ended up with an 8-foot tear in one of the seams of our mainsail, which thankfully had a roller furling boom.
Yeah.
So that was a surprising moment. We had to roll the sail up and make it very small, so the tear was into the roller part. And then we got to Tonga, and then we had a friend who was a sailmaker send us written text instructions of what to do. We rented a little hut ashore, and while the children played with the children and Max played the passage to New Zealand, I was there with a speedy stitcher and each hole into each hole, matching up the wide panel for the other panel to stitch it and glue it and put a patch on top of it. And so literally that was 6 days, morning till night, working on that. They would bring the baby to me to feed and then bring him back to bathe the others for his nap. But we got it fixed. We got the sail back on board. We sailed to New Zealand. That same sail took us all the way here to the
With your repair.
on the boat, and when we took it to a sailmaker, expecting him to have to. But he said, "Nope, this is a professional job. That's good." That caught our breath when we were doing it, and we kind of had to figure out how to handle the moment. But like you said, you catch your breath.
And great for the kids to see that. Like it's, because I mean, you're in some remote place, you can't just run to the sailmaker and fix it with money. Even if, we had the budget, there was nobody to give the money to. So you just need to, okay, let's figure out how to fix this and reach out to friends and resources that we have and get on with it.
When we came in Santa Marta in Colombia, there is a cape, and I had the spinnaker up. There was 50 knots of wind. We come to the cape, 20 knots, 25 knots, 30 knots. So I couldn't bring this thing down. Say something will happen here. And the ring to the halyard broke. So the spinnaker, under the boat, in the props, I couldn't start the engines.
We have some familiarity with
Luckily, the wind was blowing off the coast, so we were off the land. It took us 2-3 hours to get that thing. And we come in the port in Santa Marta. We say, where is the rubbish? When we have a sail, it's destroyed. Sail destroyed? No, this destroyed. They repaired the sail and we flew it there. Yeah, the mid.
Well, there's a different approach once you get outside of North America and Europe. We just replace things in our modern society, and you go into Mexico to buy a new alternator, and they're like, no, we can fix that, and they'll strip it down and fix it and test it on their little test bench, and it's a healthier mentality. We got all sorts of stuff made in Fiji. We got stuff machined in Tonga. We go in, like, I want one that looks a bit like this. I find a lot of my clients that, they don't come from a background where they're fixing things, and we just encourage them, start doing the basic servicing, just start to get comfortable, because it's going to make your trip so much better if you have that level of comfort and you're not reliant on contractors and random locations.
Yeah, you have to learn mechanics, have the patience to dismount something yourself. The bigger the boat, the more...
The more systems, the bigger.
The more system,
yes.
And the more... On the other hand, so our boats have a lot of redundancy.
Yes, yeah.
So that are explorer vessels or like your vessel. You have to continue. If you're, I don't know, in a remote place, 1,000 nautical miles from any help, there is no other way than...
We tell folks they either...
redundancy or fix it.
They either need to have redundancy, a way to do the same function but differently, or live without it. So, we look at water makers as a classic example. It would be great to have 2 water makers, but that's not in our budget or our space. So we've got lots of spares for the water maker. And then we never let our water tanks, because it's just, at the end of the day, water makers are just a bunch of pumps. So something's going to break eventually. We never would let our water level get down below a level that we couldn't exist on. It may be uncomfortable, but we could always exist. So we always kept that reserve. If you have that same mentality that there's either a way to fix it or replace it or do without, then you can continue to go. What concerns us when we help people set up boats is they're just entirely dependent on a generator. Well, as we all know, generators break. And if you don't have a workaround, an inverter with a big enough battery bank or another way to power stuff, then we see people get stuck on their trip. So We knew a boat. They were leaving Mexico. They were like several hundred miles out of Mexico on the way to Marquesas. Turn around because their generator stopped because they were wholly dependent on their genset for their water maker and power generation. It makes for a less pleasant trip if you're so dependent on one system, and that's where having redundancies or a different way of accomplishing the same goal.
So I did a solo Atlantic crossing from Newport, Rhode Island to Ostend with a boat that I bought in America. And I changed the autopilot, and these guys, I told the guys I need 2 computers, 2 pumps. Yeah, I need redundancy when I'm solo. Yeah, but no, that's H5000. That is so safe. That breaks never. Say, and I need a computer. Well, we will give you a spare computer in the box, in the box, new, and then you change the wires and the pump. You know what these pumps are, so you can have them for 10 years. So they persuaded me of something I didn't want. Well, yeah. My autopilot failed. I was 500 miles from the Azores, so I was 500 nautical miles on the wheel.
I actually talked somebody through. I was doing the Ark on a client's boat 2 years ago now, because the Ark's actually underway. I've got a client in the Ark at the moment, which is fun.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually had a client cross the Atlantic every year for the last 3 years, but 2 years ago I went with them.
Yeah.
And one of our other clients was in a sister ship, and he managed to let his battery system get to zero, and all the electronics did a factory reset. So I actually talked him through how to do a dockside initialization.
Yeah.
So in that case, it worked. But yeah,
I can imagine.
but it's never as easy as the technician thinks it is. Because I mean, there's some really good marine technicians out there, but a lot of them haven't had the luxury of doing sustained cruising. They might race, they might do short trips, but it's a different mentality crossing oceans. So just giving you the computer in a box, you know, they don't understand that that's not the same as just installing it all tied to the dock. Plus add in fatigue and seasickness and motion.
And I worked the whole day for that thing, and
it didn't work.
And it didn't work. Well, we all have a kind of reconversion after passing 7 years or 10 years at sea.
This is actually the 6-year anniversary of us tying up at the Inner Harbor. Facebook reminded me of that this morning. So when we got back, we realized we didn't want to necessarily do like most of our peers, like ex-senior officers from the military going into the defense industry, wanted to do something in the marine world. So we started a small company helping people do that. And then we found ourselves not by any strategic plan as supporting a yacht brokerage. So now our big focus is helping people not just go buy the boat, because that's kind of the easy part, but listening to what are your requirements? What do you want to do? You know, what's the mission? What are the constraints? And then help find that boat. And then of course, the more transactional, help them buy that boat. And that has been so much fun. Last year I was in Fiji's, BVI, Seychelles, French Med a few times, and more rewarding, you know, helping them go and do those things. And, you know, people are always worried about how do we go from sitting watching YouTube videos to going and doing that. And, you know, it's not, as you know, it's not rocket science, but it's also serious. Helping them get set up with training schools or the psychology of voyaging type stuff, or talking about budgets. And then the less sexy stuff, like how do we need to get insurance and how do we do medical coverage? You know, as you know, it's more than just the boat. So it's been super gratifying to help.
Yes. Gives confidence to people.
Yeah. We wish we were still out cruising, but it's kind of fun. If we can't be out cruising, at least we're helping other people, and we get fun. And now the nice thing with Starlink and WhatsApp is we get all these fun pictures from people all over the world doing stuff.
People meet one another in Mexico and find out they had both bought their boat through Max, and so we go.
We were just out for dinner with some of our clients that have become good friends, and they're younger, so we've set them up with some of the other younger cruisers. And what do they call it? The WhatsApp group is called Max's Kids. Max's Sailing Kids. And you know, so it's fun, and it kind of keeps us connected, and you know,
and you learn a degree of commitment, and you see the commitment.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the difference about doing this part of the business. I mean, we do the local brokerage like every other company as well, but they're big purchases, but they're 2-week summer holidays, occasional weekends, so it's significant discretionary spending. but it's not the same as people that are buying that one boat. They're mostly going to do it once in their life. It's taken a long time for them to sacrifice to raise enough money to do it. They've, departing from their careers, their, family connections here to do this once in a lifetime adventure. So it's really important that we get them that right boat.
From the unknown to the confidence.
If ask could anybody do this? I think anybody who has the idea in their mind and it just won't go away can do it. And one of the things that I think is really important is to help them build the foundation of skills that give them confidence to learn more skills. So not so much to just buy the boat and drop the lines and head off, but to find a way to practice locally, take some lessons, do some charters, do a leg with somebody who's already out there cruising. We took crew on some of our legs. There are networks and websites for doing that. Get a really good understanding of what is the light going to be like. Invest in their relationships so they're still speaking to one another when they're out there, maybe even nicely. But also that they learn how to patch things up when you don't speak nicely, because they call it ruptures, right? Ruptures happen in relationships. So how do you circle back and mend them and repair them and learn from it and catch your breath and have your smoke, have your tea, it is it, do it again, right? But yeah, I think anybody can, but the ones who want to will find the way to learn the skills to give them the confidence, to not be a risk. Because if someone goes out there and they're unprepared, now they're a risk to the search and rescue crews, the Navy, the people other sailors who have to go and respond, and that's not fair to anybody either. So I do think preparation is really important, and that's what's been really fun together with Max to.
It's an investment,
couple families, exactly, invest in that future and that dream, but also to give them the confidence they can do it. So there's a young couple right now. I met them in January. They came to one of my seminars at a boat show. They said, we want to do what you're doing. Well, Max helped them buy their boat a couple of weeks ago. They're going to cruise locally here in BC. And then down the road, when they're ready, they may well head offshore. But we helped them shape they were going to just buy a boat and head for French Polynesia.
And we were able to help work with them to let's rationally look at this, look at your budget and say, what actually fits in here because it's not just the price tag you see on Yacht World. It's, all those other things. What's the project cost? And then listening to both of them about what's the real objective and what really fits into your life at this moment? So in this case, it ended up being really a local boat that they're going to have a lot of fun with their family. And then if they do decide to do the big offshore thing at some point, they're going to be better prepared, but not leap into it now with, the wrong boat, the wrong budget.
Good preparation. I was 60 years old when I went to the famous Antwerp Naval School, and I have my master's ticket, 500 GT STCW. Yes. So it was courses. I was with youngsters of 18 years old, and I was the old chap. The teachers were old captains. They destroyed me when I made a failure in my navigation exercise. They destroyed me. So only to say this kind of preparations are so impactful, Well, you have to do it right. And the environment is not the same as on a cargo ship or a naval.
Or even I taught a few courses for the Navy guys here in Esquimalt. And we run rigid watch rotations and very much more like that level of leadership, because that fits well with a bunch of 20-year-olds. It's very different when it's your home and your spouse and your children, and we're both equally competent. So you have to.
I had them both. I had crew that I paid. So there I need this rigor ones. They have a labor maritime contract, so there are things in the contract that I have to respect and that they have to respect. And then I have kids who are wishing them with me.
That's a pleasure to me.
Yeah, this was great.
Good trip.
There we go.